Father, I just pray as we open your word today, that you will speak through me. Help me to, I want this to be your words. I don't want to be up here saying what I want and then you never speak to people. Speak to me, Lord. Don't let this just be something that I say, but help it to be something that I learn as well. Just be with us now. In your name, amen. So Dave did a great job reading our verses that kind of leads up to our sermon. Well, let's just look at them one more time. Proverbs 10, verse 9 says, "He who walks in integrity, walks securely, but he who perverts his way will be found out." And then Proverbs 28, verse 6, "Better is the poor who walks in integrity than he who is crooked, though he be rich." So integrity keeps us secure, and it is better for us than riches. That's what the Bible tells us. This makes me think of a short story by D.H. Lawrence, The Rocking Horse Winner. Not sure if you're familiar with that story. But the idea is that there's a poor family, and they're living like they're not poor. They're living above their means, and they have servants and all this stuff, and they're looking for money all the time. They're always looking for more money. And the writer even kind of uses a little bit of he acts like the house is whispering, "There's got to be more money. There's got to be more money." And their little boy finally recognizes that the parents don't have the money that they need, so he begins to be worried about the money himself. And he hears from one of their servants, the gardener, I think it was, who was betting on race horses. And so he begins to think, oh, well, maybe I can too. So he rides his rocking horse as hard as he can. And for some, this is the way the author writes it, that he goes in, as he rides his rocking horse, he gets to this point where he can know who's going to win the next race, what horse is going to win the next race. And so he rides his rocking horse hard and hard and knows and they bet on that horse and they win, but he doesn't always know. Doesn't always know. Well, this continues as the boy grows, to the point where he's an adult and he still has this little tiny rocking horse that he rides regularly to find out who's going to win the race. And there's big derbies coming up, so he wants to know who's going to win. So he rides his rocking horse hard, 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 and his mother has no idea this is going on this whole time. But the mother goes and finally finds out about it, so she goes into his bedroom the day just before the derby when he's riding the horse hard, riding that rocking horse. And she tries to stop him, and he just keeps going. And eventually he apparently gets to that place where he knows what the horse is going to be, who's going to be the winner. And he says the name and falls off the rocking horse and dies. That's the end of the story. They bet on the horse and they win lots of money, but that's the end of the story for the little boy. The parents' desire for money drove their son mad. Just trying to earn money. In the end, he's dead. With nothing to show for it. The Bible tells us that integrity is better than our riches. The integrity is, according to vocabulary.com, having integrity means doing the right thing in a reliable way. It's a personality trait we admire since it means a person has a moral compass that does not waver. Doing the right thing in a reliable way. All of us want someone we can rely on that is reliable, that always will do what we expect them to do. They have a moral compass that does not change, does not waver. There is a slide for that, Jacob. So, this story, these verses about integrity made me think of a story in the Old Testament. 1 Kings chapter 13. 1 Kings chapter 13. It's quite an interesting story. One I've pondered for a little while, what it really, why some of the things happen the way they do in this story. And I don't think I know everything yet, but it's interesting. So 1 Kings chapter 13. We're going to start by reading verses 1 through 3. Now behold, there came a man of God from Judah to Bethel by the word of the Lord, while Jeroboam was standing by the altar to burn incense. He cried against the altar by the word of the Lord and said, O altar, altar, thus says the Lord, behold, a son shall be born to the house of David, Josiah by name, and on you he shall sacrifice the priests of the high places, who burn incense on you, and human bones shall be burned on you. Then he gave a sign the same day, saying, This is the sign which the Lord has spoken. Behold, the altar shall be split apart, and the ashes which are on it shall be poured out. So we see a man of God's prophecy. If you look back to chapter 12, Jeroboam the kingdom of Israel was under 3 kings. So call it as the kingdom of Israel, all 12 nations, all 12 tribes under one king, for 3 kings. And after Solomon, they split. This is just as the split is happening. Jeroboam is the king in Israel, the 10 tribes, and Judah is the other kingdom with Rehoboam. And Jeroboam is afraid that the people of his nation, the 10 tribes, are going to run away from him, are not going to follow him because he doesn't have the temple of God in his territory. So he sets up 2 golden calves, one in Bethel and one in Dan. 2 golden calves. He sets up his new religion of worshiping this calf, and he tells the people, this is your God. This is the God that brought you out of Israel, brought you out of Egypt. And the end of chapter 12, we're told that Jeroboam is at the altar burning incense. If you remember the beginning of our passage we just read, it says, while he was burning incense. So this may very well be the first service, the first big event that they've had for this calf worship. And there's a prophet of God that comes, a man of God that comes and speaks against the calf worship. He's called a man of God, which is another synonym often for a prophet. But he's just called a man of God. We're never given his name. I believe that is there because we're not given his name because God didn't want him to be remembered. He wanted the message to remember. It was more important what God had to say than this man's name. Notice the man of God doesn't come from Israel where the calves are. It comes from Judah, the other nation of Israel, the other nation of the people of Israel. Maybe that's because there were no faithful servants of God in Israel to speak against the calf worship. They'd all already given in. They all had already started to worship the calves and fallen to that. He prophesies against the altar. He's using the altar as a picture. This altar, this is a picture of the whole worship system that you set up. And his prophecy is really quite amazing. Because he gives the name of a king 300 years in advance. Who's going to come and destroy, burn people's bones, and sacrifice the prophets on that. If you turn to 2 Kings chapter 23, it's also on the PowerPoint. But 2 Kings chapter 23 is the fulfillment. Verses 15 and then 16. Furthermore, the altar that was at Bethel, and the high place which Jeroboam the son of Nebat, who made Israel sin, had made, even that altar and the high place he broke down, then he demolished its stones, ground them to dust, and burned its Asherah. Now Josiah turned. He saw the graves that were on the mountain, and he sent and took the bones from the grave and burned them on the altar and defiled it according to the word of the Lord, which the man of God proclaimed, who proclaimed these things. So not only is the fulfillment given there in 2 Kings, but it's make sure you know this is a fulfillment of prophecy. This is exactly what was told you was going to happen, and it's happening. Close to 300 years in advance, this prophet gave the king by name. The man of God gave the king by name. So let's see what Jeroboam has to say. Let's see the king's response. Verse 4 through 10, sorry. Now when the king heard the saying of the man of God, which he cried against the altar in Bethel, Jeroboam stretched out his hand from the altar, saying, Seize him. But his hand which he stretched out against him dried up, so he could not draw it back to himself. The altar also was split apart, and the ashes were poured out from the altar, according to the sign which the man of God had given by the word of the Lord. The king said to the man of God, Please entreat the Lord your God, and pray for me, that my hand may be restored. So the man of God entreated the Lord, and the king's hand was restored to him. And it became as it was before. Then the king said to the man of God, Come home with me, and refresh yourself, and I will give you a reward. But the man of God said to the king, If you were to give me half of your house, I would not go with you, nor would I eat bread or drink water in this place. For so it was commanded me by the word of the Lord, saying, You shall eat no bread, nor drink water, nor return by the way which you came. So he went another way, and did not return by the way which he came to Bethel. So if this really is what seems to be this first big event for the calf worship, Jeroboam has already given up. He's already given himself completely over to this calf worship and has rejected God. Because at the first big event, somebody says, This is wrong. And what is his response? Seize him! He doesn't have any inclination that maybe this might be right. Maybe what this man of God is saying is right. Maybe I should listen. No, immediately, seize him. And that outstretched arm, which he was using his authority of, shrivels up. He can't pull it back. That outstretched arm was his authority. And God was showing him, that authority that you think you have, look what I can do. Just like I can shrivel your arm and make it so you can't pull it back, I can ruin your authority. I can ruin your kingdom right now. Notice when his arm is shriveled up, he just set up these calves. He's belligerent that these are the true God. But yet when he wants his arm fixed, he doesn't pray to his idol. He doesn't sacrifice to his idol. He acknowledges God. He asks the man of God to pray to his God, the man of God's God, not the king's God. Pray to your God for my hand, for my arm. He doesn't ask the man of God to pray for forgiveness or to pray for a heart change, but pray for his arm. Just like Pharaoh with Moses. Every plague. Oh, Pharaoh, ask your God to get rid of this plague for us. Or, oh, Moses, get rid of this plague for us. Ask your God to get rid of this plague for us. Never once does he say, Moses, ask your God to forgive me for my stubbornness, for my hard heart. No, he every time, get rid of this plague for us. Get rid of this plague. This king just saw 3 miracles in just a few minutes. He stretches out his arm withers. That's a miracle. As his arm is withered, the altar cracks in half like the man of God just said it was going to. And then God heals his arm. That's 3 miracles in just a few minutes. And that has no bearing to him. He doesn't react at all. Instead, he says, well, if I can't get this prophet by my strength, I'll befriend him and make him seem weak that way. So he invites him to his house. His desire was not to honor the man of God, but to diminish the man of God's message. Because if the man of God had come to the king's house, in that culture, if you go and have food with someone, if you go and have a meal with someone, you were their friend. You were endorsing them. And if the man of God had come to the king's house and endorsed the king, what was the point of the sermon he'd just given? What was the point of the prophecy he'd just given against this altar? So God knew what Jeroboam was going to do, and he told the man of God ahead of time, don't eat there, don't drink there, and go home a different way. And the man of God says, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go home a different way. I'm not going to eat here. I'm going to go home a different way. Let's continue the story. Verses 11 through 19. And an old prophet was living in Bethel, and his sons came and told him all the deeds which the man of God had done that day in Bethel. The words which he spoke to the king, they also related to their father. Their father said to them, which way did he go? Now his sons had seen the way which the man of God who came from Judah had gone. Then he said to his son, saddle the donkey for me. So they saddled the donkey for him, and he rode away. So he went after the man of God and found him sitting under an oak. And he said to him, are you the man of God who came from Judah? And he said, I am. Then he said to him, come home with me and eat bread. And he said, I cannot return with you, nor go with you, nor will I eat bread or drink water with you in this place. For a command came to me by the word of the Lord, you shall not eat no bread, nor drink water there. Do not return by going the way which you came. He said to him, I also am a prophet like you. And an angel spoke to me by the word of the Lord, saying, bring him back with you to your house, that he may eat and drink water. But he lied to him. So he went back with him and ate bread in his house and drank water. So who is this old prophet? I'm not asking who this old prophet is and who is his name. We don't. Again, he's not named. But what was his motives? Some have speculated maybe he was a false prophet. He was a prophet for the idols. And so he wanted to discredit him just like the king wanted to. A little hard to believe when, as we'll see later in the story, God speaks through this old prophet. And later in the story, yet, he admits that, okay, this prophecy that this man of God has given is going to happen. Maybe he was a true prophet and just wanted to have some fellowship with this man and wanted to learn from him. But why would he lie about an angelic messenger? I think probably our best explanation is that he was backsliding. He was an old prophet. I mean, his sons were attending the idol worship. His sons heard everything that the prophet said, so they must have been there. I think he'd become old, lazy, and complacent. Didn't want to do much. Thought, I'm too old to mess around with all this stuff. I'll let the young people do this now. I'm too old for this. Possibly he was even jealous of this man's ministry and wanted it to be destroyed just like his was. So the man of God said, I'm going to go home a different way, and he left. But he stops. He doesn't go very far. He stops and sits under a tree. He was probably very tired. He just traveled to Israel, stood in front of the king, and made this bold proclamation in public in front of everybody. And he probably was tired. But the Lord had told him, get out of that city, get away. Don't stay. But he lingered. And if he hadn't lingered, he might not have been caught by this trap of the old prophet. So he disobeys God for comfort and nourishment. He was deceived, but he still disobeyed. Let's look at how God responds to this. Verses 20 through 25. The man of God's punishment. Now it came about, as they were sitting down at the table, the word of the Lord came to the prophet which had brought him back. And he cried to the man of God who came from Judah, saying, Thus says the Lord, because you have disobeyed the command of the Lord, and have not observed the command which the Lord your God commanded you, but have returned and eaten bread and drunk water in the place which he said to you, Eat no bread and drink no water, your body shall not come to the grave of your fathers. And it came about, after he had eaten, and after he had drunk, that he saddled the donkey for him, for the prophet which he had brought back. Now, when he had gone, a lion met him on the way, and killed him. and his body was thrown on the road, with the donkey standing beside it, and the lion also standing beside the body. And behold, men passed by and saw the body thrown on the road, and the lion standing beside the body. So they came and told it in the city where the old prophet lived. This sounds pretty harsh. He was deceived. I mean, come on, God, he was deceived. But he still disobeyed. Yes, the old prophet lied to him, but he still disobeyed God's words. He'd received a command from God. Why would he accept an opposing command from a secondary source? His fleeing from the city was to demonstrate the vileness of Bethel, to demonstrate how awful this calf worship was. And he had not accomplished that yet. He had not gotten far away enough. Why would he think God would be okay for him to go back? And his punishment is it lines right up with how his ministry was. He had a very public ministry. He was out in front of everyone. And he had a very public punishment. He had a very strong message. These altars are bad. Out in front of everybody. And he had a very strong punishment. And if God had not judged this man of God that he sent to tell the people, you're sinning, wouldn't that make them question whether God would actually judge them? God's not going to judge his own man. Why would he judge us? Another miracle happens here. A lion kills a man, does not eat him. Doesn't eat the donkey that's next to him either. Doesn't eat any passerbyers that see the lion. And the donkey stays put next to a lion. Don't know too many donkeys that are just going to stand there next to a lion after their rider has literally been ripped off them and killed. Most animals at that point would have ran. But he didn't. The donkey stayed. God was using these animals to show this wasn't just any old event that this man died by. I was judging him. I want you to know that I was involved in it. So if we continue in the chapter, we're going to see what the man of God's legacy was. Verses 26 through 32. Now when the prophet who brought him back from the way heard it, he said, "It is the man of God who disobeyed the command of the Lord. Therefore the Lord has given him to the lion, which has torn him and killed him, according to the word of the Lord which he spoke to him." Then he spoke to his son, saying, "Saddle the donkey for me." And they saddled it. He went and found his body thrown on the road, and the donkey and the lion standing beside the body. And the lion had not eaten the body nor torn the donkey. So the prophet took up the body of the man of God and laid it on the donkey, brought it back, and he came to the city of the old prophet to mourn and to bury him. He laid his body in his own grave, and they mourned over him, saying, "Alas, my brother." After he had buried him, he spoke to his son, saying, "When I die, bury me in the grave in which the man of God is buried. Lay my bones beside his bones. For the thing shall surely come to pass, which he cried by the word of the Lord against the altar in Bethel, and against all the houses of the high places which are in the cities of Samaria." So this old prophet was a false prophet. It's pretty hard to believe when at the end of the story he's saying this is going to happen. These calves are bad, and it's going to this prophecy that he said is going to happen. But everyone in the city heard about the man of God's death. This old prophet heard about it, and when he heard it, he knew immediately who it was. He knew immediately. He himself had prophesied that he was going to die. He was not going to make it home. So what was his motives of bringing the man of God back? Was he feeling guilty for deceiving him? We're not really told. But it's interesting to think about. What was his motives? Was it purely selfish? He wanted to have his body buried next to this man because this man was such a godly man, and maybe that'll give him some. Was he trying to honor this man in his message? We're not told yet, again, but he does now believe that the prophecy is going to happen. Whether he believed that at the beginning, he does now. It's not mentioned here, but if we turn back to 2 Kings chapter 23, it seems that on the grave of the man of God and this old prophet, there's some sort of symbol or sign to tell who's laid there, who's buried there. Verse 17 of chapter 23 of 2 Kings says, Then he's talking about Josiah, said, What is this monument that I see? And the men of the city told him, It is the grave of the man of God who came from Judah and proclaimed these things which he had done against the altar at Bethel. Which you have done against the altar of Bethel. There's some sort of monument, something that would. This is where that man of God that prophesied against our altar is buried. Josiah has just destroyed the altar and just burned bones on the altar. And so he must be pretty near the altar, and he can see the monument about this man of God. How clear could it be that these altars are wrong? These calf worship is wrong. You have a monument to a man who said it was wrong from God. Think about it. If the man of God had made it home, his ministry would never have been as strong. There would never be a monument to him right there. I'm not saying that he was right to go and eat and be punished. The Lord used that. The Lord used his mistakes to make a strong statement. We're going to look at the last two verses of 1 Kings chapter 13. Last few verses. And here we're going to see the king's stubbornness. Verses 33 and 34 say, After this event, Jeroboam did not return from his evil way. But again he made priests of the high places from among all the people. Any who would he ordained to be the priests of the high places. This event became sin to the house of Jeroboam, even to blot it out and destroy it from the face of the earth. Jeroboam should have learned from the downfall of the man of God. I mean, he saw 3 miracles in just a few minutes. And then if everyone else in the city, you got to know that the king has heard about it.